Gray Zone Warfare is an extraction shooter made by Madfinger Games that just released into early access today, April 30th, to 51% negative reviews on Steam. Recently, I've been hearing chatter about this game a fair amount, so I decided to have a look and see if I can do you all a service at the same time. After creating an avatar, you get to choose between one of three factions: Blackwater LARPing as Caesar's Legion, literally just Wagner, and Elon Musk's Private Army. Look, the border of the logo even looks like a blue checkmark. And I pay for Twitter Blue, so clearly this is the outfit for me. After your standard Welcome to Early Access screen, you're deposited in the main menu, where currently you have a choice of two game modes, Warfare and Joint Operations. The difference between the two is that Warfare allows for players to shoot at each other, and Joint Operations has player versus player damage completely disabled. So Tarkov, but unlike Tarkov, you don't have to pay $250 to play a PvE mode with your friends. After a loading screen with some elements that made me feel old in a good way, I entered my first game of Joint Operations, and the game DC'd before I even finished reading the welcome screen. Well, you know what they say, it's a beta! Thankfully, this was the only time the game disconnected me from a game or crashed. When you begin any game, you start in your faction's base camp, where you can fiddle around with your inventory, buy things from the vendors, and accept tasks from them. I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary here, aside from just another game that wants to copy Tarkov's inventory system. So I just accepted a task from the medical vendor who wanted me to go find some medical supplies that were left at a water tower. Okay, simple enough. It's here I noticed that the game looked incredibly awful, so I stopped to see if I could fix that. However, after fiddling around with the settings for about 10 minutes, I couldn't really get the game to look good or run well. The biggest issue for me is that objects outside of my immediate vicinity all descended into this horrible Vaseline mess that I couldn't get more detailed or sharper no matter what I did. It was kind of like depth of field was turned on and I couldn't get it off. To make matters worse, I noticed if I approached this AI standing at the gate, he didn't seem to get any less blurry. And this is kind of critical for an extraction shooter where seeing threats from far off, especially human-shaped ones, is kind of important. One of the major complaints about the game currently is the performance is awful, so I just logged it as a known issue and actually went off to play the game. And that's where the stuttering and hang-ups started. Good thing I'm playing the PvE mode. I'd hate to be shot while my computer freaks out. And we're still stuck in it. And there we go. I'm no stranger to seeing first-time run jitters, but this is an extraction shooter, and every little problem like this could cost me all of my stuff. Having to play at cinematic 24 FPS is manageable, but if I lock up and get shot in the face, there's nothing I can do about it. So I may seem somewhat sensitive, however, I'm not going to risk an entire evening's worth of fun on that. Also, it took me a couple of seconds, but after I locked up and dropped about 5 to 6 feet, I realized that I had wounded my shins. I was confused by the icon. It looked like I was being taken over by the specters of chaos.
Do you hear the voices too?
On my way to my objective, I stopped into a random hotel and found my first lootable object. Eyeballin'. Yo! Walking further down the road, I was immediately surrounded by gunfire. And like the very smart individual that I am, I immediately sprinted directly towards it. I wanted to get into combat as soon as possible because I had seen multiple videos of terrible hit registration and aimbot snapshotting AI. I was eager to see if this was actually still a problem. Soon after, I spotted my first NPC. After some more gunfire, I came face to face with this. Man's form is distorting like he's becoming incorporeal. In all seriousness, a bugged ragdoll A-posing at people isn't a new issue for video games, but there's something very wrong with this game. A little bit more Marco Polo with gunfire and the game hitching up at an extremely bad time, I finally shot my first man dead. Yep. It appears the hit registration works fine, and the AI didn't suddenly snap back and shoot me in the face. Oh, hang on. Well, he shot me, and I'm not instantly dead. Let me just pop some eyeballing so we can keep balling. Yeah! Every other fight was effectively the same story on the way to the objective. The AI did not appear omnisciently aware of their surroundings, and when I shot them, they died. In this instance, an AI some distance away didn't react when I shot another one, so it does not appear that the AI is superhumanly aware or cheating. My next encounter of note was mistaking a player for an AI. However, because we're playing joint operations, player versus player damage is disabled. You could even double check the positions of friendly players in your faction by looking at the map. I'll just write down in my report that I was merely checking to see if his blue check mark was properly deflecting bullets. I finally arrived at the water tower and proceeded to clear the area, which wasn't any more difficult than any of the other fights that I had been in. However, it's then I ran into a problem. I didn't actually know what I was looking for. I was told to find medical supplies, but I had no idea what these medical supplies looked like. I did find more eyeballing, though. I then rummaged around the area for about 10 minutes trying to find the magic pixel on the box I was supposed to get. Even going so far as to leave the camp and go to the exact map coordinates just in case I had actually gone to the wrong spot. No dice. Thankfully, though, I eventually walked dead smack into the thing. A picture of the item I'm supposed to get would have been nice in retrospect. Cinematic 24 FPS getting kind of fatiguing, I decided to turn the game down to all lows to see if I could get a good frame rate out of it at all. The best I could manage was 40 FPS running through this cornfield while noting all of the visual artifacts around me. I arrived at my extraction point and figured out the interface to call for the helicopter, and then I made the worst mistake of my life, simply turning around and looking back at the town. Oh my god, it's hideous. Yes, I know I turned everything down to the low settings, but this is hideous even for low settings, my god. The extraction helicopter arrived after about a minute, and then I was treated to what is probably the worst looking helicopter ride sequence I have seen in years. I will openly state again, I had just turned the game down to its lowest settings. So I have to admit that this is the worst possible image that I could present for the game. However, the point I am trying to make by showing you this is thus. To me, the low settings for this game look so bad that they're not only aesthetically unpleasing to the eyes, they're also basically unplayable for a competitive game. Turning the settings down actually hinders your ability to play the game properly. Everything is so blurry that you're never going to be able to pick out a player in time before he sees you, in addition to it being extraordinarily unappealing to the eyes. So from my point of view, if you can't play this game maxed out, and I don't think a whole lot of people can, there's no reason to play this game. You're going to be playing a game that looks ugly, and you're also going to be losing because it looks ugly. Someone should probably remind the developers that the performance gains that you get by lowering your settings are entirely worthless if the game's quality drops to a level where you can't really play it properly. Which brings me to my conclusion about Gray Zone Warfare. From a gameplay standpoint, it seems totally fine to competent as a Tarkov clone with a PvE focus. However, from a visual and performance point of view, I don't think the game is worth playing right now. Unless you magically have the exact specs that the developers have the game running perfectly on right now, which I highly doubt is most people. However, I've been around the block several times, so I know those people that are lucky enough to have a system that can run this perfectly are just gonna go, oh, well, it runs fine on my system, I don't know what the problem is. From their perspective, the game is probably a whole lot more enjoyable than I found it. However, depending on your PC, their perspective may also not be your perspective. I think this game needs more time in the oven in the performance and visual department before I can recommend it.